Psychopaths, the love of my life through the good times and the bad times. And oh, have there been bad times. But Season 3 coupled with First Inspector set the stage for a finale that could create the best real Psychopaths edition since the original way back in 2012. But I've been thinking about this lightly for months since First Inspector aired, and finally quite in depth for the past few days, and I think it's time we looked at what we know, what we think we know, and how it all might play out in Psychopaths Season 4. These are all simply my ideas, and it's impossible for me to detach myself from my own wishes and own internal creative direction, but I think that there's evidence behind my claims that gives us at least direction, even if my later predictions may be wrong. So, let's really get into things here. We'll kick it off by going over the aspects I'd bet money on. These are things we can infer based on the aspects of Season 3 and First Inspector, which I'm going to group together as Season 3 from now on just for brevity's sake. So one of the clears to me is the treatment of original season characters. It's no secret that they were fan service in Season 3, and I don't think that's going to change. Like I said in my video about Season 3, this is Arata and Kei's story, and that will likely lead to the fan favorites taking a backseat in the action again. I mean, just look at First Inspector. Ginoza could have really been anyone outside of his final scene, and both his and Kogami's main action scenes are detached from the overall flow of the movie. Kogami runs away to fight the Pathfinder individually, and Ginoza's in an entirely different building. Even Kei vs. Kogami doesn't actually have an impact on the plot. They could have been removed along with what they dealt with, and the plot would remain the same. So that, coupled with the largest cast of important characters in Psychopaths history, and I think we have a case for some backseats being taken. Sticking on Kogami and Ginoza for a second though, despite a likely minor role, they still have to be involved. This means that their agency SAD needs a reason to be included in the action as well. The easiest and most well-established foreign affair for them to use is immigration, one of the largest points of Season 3. Given its former prevalence and a necessity for SAD, it's safe to assume that immigration, and from that discrimination, will be prominent in the cases and climax of Season 4. We also have the implications of the Big Four leaders' plan to expose darker aspects of Japan's society that weren't yet felt in the enclosed spaces of First Inspector. With their connection to Arata's father as well, we have a solid case for immigration and some backing to points later as well. Speaking of Arata and Kei's families, that's something else we know has to be addressed in Season 4. There's no secret there at all. But knowing it has to happen and how big of a deal it's made out to be has some implications. To make it really pay off and to create a cohesive anime, it'll likely need to be closely related to the cases and climax that prevail in the newest entry. Not only is there not enough time to separate it, but it crafts a more compelling narrative. That's why every detective movie gives them some relation to the case. So how will that play out? Well, we know that both of the families are connected to a certain character, Homura. It's heavily implied that the congressman who assisted Arata's father Atsushi was Homura's adoptive father, Kyoichiro. For Kei, Shirogane lured him out to kick off First Inspector by dropping that the Homura family was involved in his brother's death. Those notes presumably tie mysterious aspects of both lead characters back to Homura. Those could be false details, but it's more likely they were included for a reason than not. So I'd bet that the final conflict will involve the truth behind our main pair in some relation to Homura based on narrative structure and those details. Now, we hit a snag with Homura because there really isn't much that's been revealed about him yet. At least, not directly. I believe there's something to be read into in his interactions with Sibyl, however. Look at how the downfall of Bifrost takes place. Homura outplays Shirogane and purges him from Bifrost, no questions there. But at the same time, Sibyl learns Bifrost's location and heads there just after that happens. They react with no amazement or shock as they did to Makishima's surprise, and speak with Homura as if they're good pals, bending to his demands immediately, and asking no questions other than if he'll finish their plans for Akane, which assumes that he knows their plans for Akane. I suppose there could be a mutual assumption that he knows all of Sibyl's secrets since Bifrost was manipulating them, but it strikes me as odd that the system would simply hand him the position they always held with no questions asked. In fact, looking at these interactions has the potential to reframe all of Season 3. Sure, they talked with Mika as if they were unaware of Bifrost, but they also sent her away before really engaging with Homura, and she's always just been a puppet for them. They could easily be lying to her. Plus, look at how they react to Arata and Azusawa finding the system. No resistance, and in fact, they openly welcome them, as if they knew and wanted it to happen. If Sibyl had someone inside Bifrost and was aware of it like it seems they were, then all the events we've seen could have been intentional. The bombings, Karina's election, and Azusawa's plan, and this is what it gets them. Karina's election, even after Macarena was made public, secures the idea that this society is fine with deception as long as it can benefit them. And as the leader of the anti-immigration party, along with the Big Four's bombing incidents, they reach a society with heightened immigrant tensions. This in turn could be used to test how blind the public is willing to be, just how much discrimination and terrible things they can look away from as long as their status quo is maintained. Both of these lead to the same conclusion. Sibyl is testing the waters for its final reveal. This is gonna be it, the reveal that Sibyl has teased for seasons now. Assuming this is the final season of Psycho-Pass, it's also the last chance narratively. The rhetoric of Season 3 also points to this though. I mean, they said truth like modern Star Wars says hope. From Arata and Kei's motivations, to their secrets from each other, to Azusawa and Arata's father, Sibyl mentioning Arata as an intermediary when the system is made public, Karina saying not everyone wants to keep their eyes open, the moving forward rhetoric of O'Brien, and even more I could bore you by listing. There's also still a mystery connecting Arata to the system. We know his father wanted to protect him from it, but he took his son to see it and locked away the details deep in his mind. He was part of exporting Sibyl as well, and an inspector for Bifrost. Sibyl will have to be connected to Arata's finale, again, narratively and for compulsion, and to me, the fallout of its reveal is the most logical conclusion there. Assuming that Sibyl allowed Azusawa's plan to happen, we can also know they were looking for a new pawn to replace Mika. If we look at Azusawa's timetable, we see this: kill factor 5. Now alone this doesn't mean much, but look at Vixen's response when they have to reroute the plan right there. What about the CID chief? Which can't mean Sibyl's body because they already have her. We can also see from this table that Mouse 2 releases the gas, meaning that's Pathfinder, while Mouse 1 is left to be Vixen, who is set to kill factor 5. And she's the one who questions the order about leaving the CID chief. That kill order also goes unfulfilled due to the change in plans, and Mika's still alive at the end. With this info and Sibyl's relatively cold response to Mika in Season 3 as a step down from the praise of Season 2, I think the case for Homura as their new agent is quite strong. That's also backed up by his seeming connection to Sibyl earlier. But I also believe he'll be the true main antagonist of Season 4. Azusawa is a charismatic, manipulative man, but he lacks the true essence of a Psycho-Pass villain, a desire to change society even at the cost of his own life. He's simply an opportunist vying for the top spot. Homura, however, is much more like Makishima or Kamui. He's a young man, calm in nature with a soft smile. He swats down claims of simple revenge for the idea of something greater, invoking the response, "It's a shame I won't live to see the society you create," from Shirogane. He even claims he would have given his life to see the downfall of Bifrost. Then his conversations with Sibyl show a man interested in basic life and simple pleasures. Sound familiar? But speaking of Makishima, Homer's remarks about hating games could also be a somewhat snide comment to Makishima's insistence on playing the game of life. As if they're saying, we get it, it hasn't been the same, but this is gonna be better. And as a former congressman, we can be assured that he's used people before. Just looking at him causing the downfall of Bifrost, he uses both Azusawa and Kei to bring down Shirogane, and we can assume that there were many more people used in there. That's kind of just what Bifrost did. He's the character remaining that fits the build left behind. And that's a small note. I don't think there will be a new villain introduced. No one has been left alive before as Azusawa was, and his remainder, Homer's introduction and Akane's return, doesn't leave much room for new characters to enter. Again, this is the most bloated cast we've seen for Psycho Pass. So I think that we are seeing the final chips fall into place character-wise. Now, one character I don't think we'll see too much from is Karina. Her role in Season 3 was mostly as a plot piece for action to center around. She offers some individual ideas to Arata, but that seems mostly to be for their relationship building more than anything else. She's a vessel for the Ma Karina case, a simple object for other goals with the bombings, and essentially the same thing in Azusawa's plan. Her actual self has never held much weight, being mostly a blank face in a prized role. It could be anyone and they'd all react the same. I don't have any problems with her character, but the signs don't point to actual importance from her. There's a few hints in her dialogue that she has an actual drive to change the world, but that's still in its fledgling stages. It could develop into her being the first real governor after a Sibyl fall, but that's almost pure speculation based on a few words. I think with her and Arata's developing relationship, she also has the potential to be a hostage if necessary, which I would hate to see, but it is a possibility. And finally, I think the natural step for Azusawa is to make a move on taking down or gaining control of Sibyl. This is based solely on his motivations. He does a lot of shit, goes through with a massive scale plan, and it's all because he wants to reach the top of the world, to hold the highest power there is. And then, that highest power tells him no you can't. If he follows the same motivations moving forward, his only obstacle is Sibyl. He's so good at what he does that, let's be honest, if Sibyl was actually just a computer system, he would have gained control of it. So to reach the top means becoming Sibyl, or destroying it and taking the next best thing. This is also in following with the Psycho-Pass pattern that someone has to have reached Sibyl as a section of their end goal, and it's a natural driver of the plot back to the entity that's always there in the end. So that's why I'd logically say that's what he'll be up to. So I figured I'd save my nice ugly mug for the end of the video today here instead of interspersed throughout, and we're gonna get into my personal predictions for how I think Season 4 might go. All the usual warnings I gave earlier, I can't separate myself from this and be completely objective with it, so take this with a grain of salt, but I could see these things happening / want these things to happen. But anyway, let's actually go ahead and get into that here. So for the kind of central act, the thing that's going to start everything off here, I have that being immigration and discrimination related in a worsening fashion. So things are starting to get worse. Sibyl is cracking down more on it, and I have that's going to impact Kei and Maiko a bit more than it was before. We saw them each get a little bit discriminated against, specifically with her surgery, because they were immigrants, but I think we're going to see that even more to make it more personal and provide a driving force for them to also keep moving through all this, and something personally for them to fix in all of this. Fanning those flames, I have Azusawa escaping and using those fanning those flames, using those immigrant tensions to try and take down Sibyl. And also I have escaping in some quotes there because we'll get back to that in a second. But seeing how good he has at manipulating people and going back to his only real goal to keep his motivation being attaining a level of Sibyl, I think that's the logical conclusion for him to go there if we're assuming this immigration-based conflict. So then, with all that happening, I think that's where it's really gonna come into play that Sibyl's using these worsening tactics to test this blind society and see really just how much they can get away with. I say get away with, but really finally test the waters for their reveal. And I think that this is also a good point to bring back in the changes that Sibyl went through at the ends of Season 2 and Season 3, respectively. Because we see at the end of Season 2 that Akane forces it to change to Judge Kamui, and at the end of Season 3 that Arata forces it to change to not, or to fairly judge Azusawa. So it'll bring in the collective psychopaths of population from Season 2 to possibly judge the immigrant group as a whole, and the choice of people, which kind of goes more along the lines of other people are choosing to ignore them. People are choosing that they can be judged this way for their own good. So I think that's going to bring both of those points in and really kind of wrap it up as a series there as well. So I think from there, with the immigrant tensions getting worse, that will force Arata and Kei to really push forward and try to solve this thing before the situation gets too critical and there's kind of a point of no return. And I think that'll happen through info being leaked to them. I think it's very Psycho-Passian, that, especially in seasons 1 and 2, that the inspectors weren't so much good at their jobs as they were just kind of there following along. So I think having the info leaked also works for that as well. I think that info will eventually lead them back to obviously be related to their past. This is going to be them finding out their secrets, why they're inspectors anyway. So I think that info will start leading them back to Sibyl and Homura, tying in Arata's backstory and Kei's backstory, like we said earlier, where they have a connection to Homura. So I think they'll get some hinted info from there, some possibly leaked looking info, and they'll have to chase it down due to the dire situation that is rising in Japan. And then I think from there we will see the reveal of Sibyl, the big thing, what Psycho-Pass has kind of always been leading up to. And I think, based on assuming that they have been running tests and working under the assumptions I stated earlier, that it will go well. There might be a little bit, again, it might kind of fan the flames more. I hate to keep saying that, but I'm uncreative and can't think of anything else. But I think that will stoke those tensions even more and really lead up to the climax there. Once Sibyl is revealed, the majority of public accepts it and the discriminated public doesn't accept it as much, knowing that especially that they're being choicefully discriminated against now. And I think this is also where we will see Homura really come into the role of the main villain, where he will be, I don't want to say quite tyrannical, but he will be a very pro-Sibyl, very law and order, crackdown kind of villain. I think that's where we're going to see his villainy really come out there, where at the same time Azusawa's plan will be reaching its final stages, where he will be posing a Kamui style or Makishima style assault on Sibyl directly, because again, he has nowhere else to go. And they'll be using a combination of his manipulation skills to again go more along the Makishima line of having some random characters do his bidding, distract the CID, and let him get into getting close to Sibyl there. So I think his suave, kind of charismatic manipulation elements will come back into play as well. And this is where I think things start to get a little more what I would want to see, what I think would make a good series more than what will probably happen. Because I think, especially in Season 3, I would have taken it in a very different direction than what they did. I think there were a lot of punches pulled. I think we didn't see death like we normally would in Psycho-Pass. But I still think these could happen. There's a chance, and that's why I'm still mentioning them here. That's why I'm still going with them. But I think the main cast as well is going to get dragged into this Azusawa plan, trying to stop him, trying to follow their leads, to figure out their truth. So I think they're all going to get pulled in as well. And there, once they're pulled in, I think there will be a trap sprung. They'll get caught, things will seem like they're really going to end, and I think that we will see, this is where it gets a bit wild, Arata will be forcefully integrated into the Sibyl system. And like we've seen with people before, with Togane and with Makishima's former accomplice, he will still maintain his individuality, because that's how Sibyl operates. They do maintain individuality even once they're incorporated into the system, and that will come into play as well. But it's bold, could see it happening. He'll be integrated into the Sibyl system. And that will be done quite directly by Homura. He'll be very involved in forcing that process through. And from there, I think this is why I see him possibly being forced into the system. We will see his mental tracing used to start weakening the system from the inside. Because we know from his father specifically that he was more gifted at manipulation. We know Arata has mental tracing and those mentalist abilities. And I think possibly that could be extruded a bit and, say, used to weaken Sibyl from the inside, to somehow mess with those criminally asymptomatic minds. It's a bit more of a stretch, but again, I think I could see that happening, especially with how big these moments of his mental traces have been. I think it's going to play into it in a big way, and I think that's how it's going to be done. And from there, I haven't mentioned the original cast yet, again, because I don't think they're going to be doing too much originally, just, again, like I explained earlier. But I think they will still have a role in it because they have to, because they're there. So I think we'll see, kind of for the first time in Psycho-Pass, I guess we saw it in Season 1, but it was still a small character count anyway, we'll see a separation of the final battle. So we'll have something going on here and something going on here. So we already talked about what's going on directly with Sibyl. And I think we'll see the original cast, specifically Sad with Kogami and Akane, the people that have access to non-Sibyl reliant weapons, because we could see those things shut down. We could see the Dominators not working. They will be taking out the actual infrastructure Sibyl's using to connect to. So if they cut those connections, if they take out the infrastructure around it, they can stop it, even if it's just temporary. They can technically take it down without taking it down. That's, again, a bit of a stretch. I don't know how obvious those things would be, but if anyone's going to know it, they'd be the most likely to, and they have the most means in terms of firepower to actually do that. So I think that's what we'll see them doing, is taking down related infrastructure. And that will also probably be happening kind of congruent with the trap being sprung, Azusawa reaching Sibyl, those things going on there. So I don't think that's one after another, that's kind of both at the same time, those two congruent battles there. So then with the combination, though, of Arata weakening the system from the inside, of them hitting the infrastructure from the outside, I think that's where we'll see Homura flip. Because, I mean, this could go either way. Destroying Bifrost could be pro-Sibyl or anti-Sibyl at the end of the day. So I don't think we can draw anything too specifically from that. But I think it's so kind of obvious that he would be pro-Sibyl. That's going to be the twist at the end, and that he's going to flip and actually be taking Sibyl down from the inside. So he's going to be the one who leaked the info. He's going to be the one who let Azusawa escape. So he was there manipulating things from behind the scenes, as the main antagonists usually do, and actually going against Sibyl himself and just letting the other people do his work for them, since he couldn't directly do it being so closely related, but having the means to let them do it. But I think the main cast, especially Kei, knowing that Arata is now part of the system, isn't going to just immediately destroy it. We've never seen the protagonist go in and want to immediately just destroy Sibyl. They recognize that there is something needed of it. So I think we'll see Kei trying to stop Azusawa from actually destroying the system entirely. And I think that's also where we'll see Homura reveal the truth to Kei. And this is another bold thing. I think that truth, because this I think goes along with some of the themes they've been going for, that truth will be nothing. It'll be just what was in the reports, that Arata's father really did kill Kei's brother and then commit suicide. And we'll just see they've been chasing a ghost the entire time. Because that fits along in with the blind public kind of theme, kind of idea they have going on, where these people are looking away from bad things. Where instead they're the flip side of it. They're trying to find something better when there isn't something there, but kind of still in the same way not wanting to face the truth that's right before them. So I think that's going to be another one of the surprise twists at the end, or could be. Again, that's something, I think that's a part that I'd really want to see more than it would actually be realistic, but I think that would be a very good twist at the end. And I think there we'll see Arata confirm this from within the system, now having the knowledge of Sibyl at his disposal and kind of having a sort of control over it with his mentalist abilities. Confirm that to Kei that, yeah, that's the truth, we know it now, and it'll kind of just be a scene where Kei has to walk away, where Azusawa is stopped, where Homura has completed his part of the plan, and things just kind of end on a somber, sad, kind of unsatisfying note that all of the build and all of that has really been for nothing, and they've just kind of been used. It's a very Metal Gear Solid kind of aspect to a plot, but a little bit Psycho-Passian as well. I think there, to cap off the original cast's scene, I think Mika in her kind of, we saw her insanity with Sibyl before, we saw her as their like ideal test subject. I think that's where we'll have the ideological battle, is Mika versus Akane, where Akane has grown, she's developed this plan. We knew from the beginning that she didn't like Sibyl, but recognized its necessity, and now she's ready to adapt it. She's ready to modify her version of justice, where Mika is not, and she's stuck in this pro-Sibyl, blind society kind of state. I think we'll see Akane win there as they're reaching the final bits of infrastructure, stop Mika, and I think that will be the cap off to the original cast's story. Again, not satisfying, not the best, but I don't think we're going to see anything satisfying for them based on what we talked about earlier. And I think there it could go one of two ways. We could see an adapted Sibyl with Arata working it from the inside with Homura's knowledge, with them adapting the infrastructure, different things like that. Or we could see a complete collapse, and then the Sibyl infrastructure goes from stopping crimes from before they happen to getting people actual mental health care, not just locking them up, but finding the signs early and making a truly healthy society. And I guess that would kind of be the like traditional kind of good ending there, where everything does kind of work out. Arata is now deceased, I guess, especially if they completely destroy the system. But that might be the emotional punch at the end. That might be the them stopping from kind of wimping out at the last second, for lack of a better term, on the spot, of not giving us those real emotional moments and pulling their punches. And that might be it at the end there. I don't really have a solid ending there. I kind of like leaving that open a little bit more, but just knowing my predictions of what comes before it. But anyway, that's all I really have to say about that. I'll stop rambling now, since this end part was a bit more self-indulgent. But anyway, if you made it all this way, especially with how long this video has gotten from my rambling, thank you for watching all the way to the end. It does mean a lot. If you're new, consider subscribing for more videos like this, like the ones on screen. Leave a like so I know to do more like this, all the usual stuff at the end of the video. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon.